And with that, we bring in Albert Breer. So let's talk about that, Albert. The option bonus you discussed yesterday.
Yep.
So from what I didn't know this, give our audience an update on, it appears Green Bay's got all the leverage here.
Yeah, it was smart of the Packers to build the option bonus in the way they did. Most bonuses that are this way have a hard deadline. So it'll be March 15th or April 1st, or in the case of Derek Carr, it was in the middle of February that forces the team to make a decision. Well, the way the Packers built the option bonus into this contract, they have to exercise it. It's fully guaranteed. The money is going to get to Aaron Rodgers one way or the other, but they don't have to exercise it until September 1st, and it doesn't have to be paid until a week after that. Part of it's paid a week after that. Part of it's paid September 30th. So that gives them the flexibility to just sort of squat on Aaron Rodgers' rights. And they don't have to act with any urgency here. And meanwhile, on the other side of the table, you've got the Jets who, now Aaron Rodgers has declared, I want to be a New York Jet. And there's a ton of pressure on them to get him there, especially with guys like Alan Lazard signing. Maybe Randall Cobb comes with him. So there's pressure on the Jets to get this done, and there's no pressure on the Packers to do it at this point.
Wow.
I still think, like, when the dust settles and when the Packers dig out from the comments that Rodgers made yesterday, that cooler heads are going to prevail, and there's a fair deal to be done here, maybe a second rounder this year and a conditional pick or two down the road based on how he plays, whether or not he plays in 2024. But as it stands right now, the Packers can sit back, sort of lean back in their office chairs, seeing what Aaron said yesterday, and smirk and say to the Jets, you got to come to us now.
Wow. So the Lamar Jackson situation's interesting to me. I had a discussion yesterday with somebody close to that organization. I said, I don't understand what the Atlanta Falcons, they have an offensive coach who would be better equipped to handle a unique quarterback. The division can't be this awful forever. So there's a moment in time now to seize the division. Because Derek Carr could win it, but we don't know if Dennis Allen can coach. He bombed with the Raiders. He's been bad so far with the Saints. He may not have the right coach. The division's weak. It would be, Lamar in Atlanta would be a merchandise home run. He's a news-making machine. And I'm like, Arthur Blank's a good owner. How long do you want to be bad? The quarterback hit rate's 50% on first-round quarterbacks. That's first-rounders.
Yeah.
Does Atlanta, Washington, isn't today the window opens for Lamar to contact other teams? Does Atlanta feel obvious to you? Is there anybody else out there?
On paper it does. But here's what you want to look at, Colin. Look at the quarterback contracts done last year. Vegas did one. Denver did one. Cleveland did one. Green Bay did one. Arizona did one. Which of those teams came out of those deals happy? Like a year later, which of those teams is looking at that and saying, wow, we hit a home run here? I think that there's something happening in the league right now that people aren't paying a lot of attention to. And it's a pushback on the idea of going and paying top dollar to get good but not great at that position. And, I think what you've seen in Tampa with Kyle Trask and now Baker Mayfield, in Washington with Sam Howell and now Jacoby Brissett, and in Atlanta with Desmond Ridder and now Taylor Heineke, is we're going to be economical at the position. And we are not going to go and pay top dollar for a Derek Carr or a Daniel Jones. We feel like we're good enough where we're going to be able to tread water with less than that, less of a spend at that position. And we're going to spend the money we save everywhere else. And we're going to wait until there's a quarterback we're all in on before we make that big splash. And, I think in a lot of ways, like Kansas City drew a roadmap for people looking to do this, right? Which is they had Alex Smith for 4 years. He was good, a good quarterback. It bought them time to get to Patrick Mahomes, and they were patient, and waited until there was a guy there that they were ready to go all in on. And they were all in on Patrick Mahomes. They go and get him. It all works out. I think this is sort of Atlanta and Washington and Tampa saying, we're not sure there's a guy out there right now that we're 100% in on. Maybe we'd be 70% in on Lamar Jackson. Maybe we'd be 80% in on Lamar Jackson. But the contract, the injuries, all of it, the 2 first-round picks going out the door, we're not 100%. So we're going to sit tight. We're going to stay loose at that position. We're going to be economical at that position. We're going to build the rest of our team, and we're going to wait for the right opportunity to come along. Now, the risk there is you could wind up waiting for too long and get yourself fired, right? But I think that's sort of the approach that we're seeing teams start to take now, and looking at some of the big quarterback deals that have been done over the last couple of years, and how at least a couple of them have blown up in teams' faces.
So I talked to somebody, an executive in the league yesterday, and they made note of how smart Kansas City was. They said, this is a great example. The Patriots used to do this, and now they're getting worked. That JuJu Smith-Schuster was wildly talented but distracted in Pittsburgh. And the Chiefs said, come here for a year. We're not going to pay anything. We're going to give you 70% of your contract's going to be bonuses and incentives. It made JuJu work hard and hit some of those. The minute he did, see you later. And the suckers come in and give him a long-term contract. So the Steelers, who've always been willing to deal with drama and personalities, bailed on him. The Chiefs, after 1 year and a good Super Bowl, bailed on him. And the Patriots let go of undrafted, workaholic, productive Jacoby Myers, not a TikTok guy, not a brand guy, and they go sign JuJu for 3 years. And I thought, Patriot fans made fun of teams that did that years ago, that did this. I cannot believe they let Jacoby go, brought in JuJu. To me, that is not the Patriot way. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I think it's trying to find a bargain is the problem there. Is that we don't want to pay $25 million a year for A.J. Brown. So, let's pay less for someone who's a fraction of that we think we can coach up and make better. And I think they sort of fell into that trap with JuJu Smith a couple of years ago, too. He's the perfect example, right? This is what they used to do. They used to get the most out of a player his first 4 years in the league. They realized part of it was their system and what they were doing with him. They let him go. He'd go get paid somewhere else. He'd get cut after a couple of years, and then he would come back. Patrick Chung was the greatest example of that. He was pretty good in his first 4 years in New England, went to Philly for a year, didn't work out, got cut. He comes back on a more economical deal, and he winds up being a bedrock for some Super Bowl teams in New England. The reverse happened with JuJu Smith. JuJu Smith was really good under Arthur Smith in Tennessee, right? He was his position coach, then he was his coordinator. Arthur Smith knew how to get everything out of JuJu Smith. JuJu Smith goes somewhere else, it doesn't work the same way. And what does New England do? After 2 years, they've got to trade his contract away for nothing. And where does JuJu Smith go? To Atlanta. Who's in Atlanta? Arthur Smith. So, I think that there's that part of it where they're looking for bargains, they're looking for good deals, and they're unwilling to swing at the top of the market because they've never done that, because they never had to do that, because they were either getting discounts on players who wanted to play with Brady, or they were bringing in lesser players who Brady could lift up. That's what Kansas City is doing now. And I think that that's sort of where the disconnect is with New England. Is I think they're still operating like Tom Brady's on the team when he's not there anymore.
Yeah. Finally, I'll circle back to my Jordan Peterson rant. The only thing I took away from Aaron yesterday that I was surprised by is that he was surprised after leaning 90% retirement going into his, thing he did in Oregon. My takeaway for that hour he talked was, how in God's name can you be surprised? You've been stringing these guys along for 9 weeks. They're tired of your crap. So my takeaway on that whole thing was, Aaron, dude, you got to be less deluded. You got to be less self-centered. You cannot be surprised. That shocked me. What do you make of that? That whether or not Jordan Peterson's right, he's a psychologist, a PhD, and his theory is to be an adult, you can't be the most important person in your life. Regardless of that, I am taken back that Aaron would be surprised by the Packers moving on him.
Well, first of all, the minute we get off here, I'm going to Google this Jordan Peterson thing because I think it's really interesting. My takeaway was okay, so you're only coming back for revenge. You know what I mean? That's sort of what I took away from it was, if you were 90% out, and then all of a sudden you're back all in, well, it's the only reason you're coming back now for revenge. And some of the questions with the Packers over the last year were questions of how engaged Aaron Rodgers was, right? They really would have liked to have had him there in April and May and June last year. And they felt like part of the reason why Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs came along later in the year rather than earlier in the year was because they hadn't had those reps with Aaron Rodgers during OTAs and mini camps and all of that other stuff. So my question is going to be going forward, what level of engagement are the Jets getting from Aaron Rodgers? And if revenge is his motivator, does that level of engagement maintain over time? Right? If they're going to have him there for 2 years, is he going to be fully engaged for the full 2 years? Because you remember Brady, right, Colin? like what Brady did that first year in Tampa, that was in the middle of COVID. He was like breaking all the rules to get work in with those guys. You remember the helicopters over that high school in Tampa?
Jesuit high school.
Like, you remember how he like walked into somebody's house. He thought it was like Byron Leftwich's house.
Right.
Right. Like because he was trying to, because he was doing everything that he possibly could to get up to speed with his teammates, learn his new environment, and build something. And so like, that's going to be what's going to be really interesting to me going forward. Whenever they work out the deal, is Aaron Rodgers going back to like the level of engagement from 10 years ago? Are we seeing like Aaron Rodgers fully engaged, and is revenge enough of a motivator to get him there? Like, I think that that's going to be a really interesting, question to ask over the next few weeks. Is he going to be at OTAs? Is he going to be at minicamp? Because if we get a fully engaged Aaron Rodgers, look out.
Right.
If we don't, we're talking about something else.
Good stuff, Albert Breer. Good seeing you, buddy, as always. Nice stuff. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.